Hope your week is off to a great start. I'm Min San-hee with our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Sana.
Good to be back. K-culture is making impressive waves here in this region and beyond. What started with the popularity of Korean dramas in Asia well over a decade ago has now spread to the West, this time driven by Korean music. In our first report, we meet the boy band that has, and I quote, climbed charts and stolen hearts in the US, according to local media there. A boy band in Korea has created a sensation all over the world. At the center of the sensation is a 7-member boy band called the Bulletproof Boy Scouts, or simply BTS. On November 19th, BTS attended the American Music Awards, one of the most prestigious music awards in the United States. It was the first time that Korean artists were invited to this awards show and to perform on stage.
너무너무 오고 싶었는데 와서 공연하게 돼서 다들 너무너무 행복해하는 것 같아요. 그리고 정말 많은 사람들한테 저희 무대를 알릴 수 있다는 것에 되게 뜻을 하고 있는 것 같아요.
저희가 이렇게 보여드리는 음악이나 퍼포먼스 진심을 강조해 주시는 것 같아서 감사하게 생각하고 있습니다.
After the American Music Awards, BTS topped the Billboard Social 50 chart for the 50th time and even made their way into the Billboard 200 chart once again. In addition, during their stay in the US, BTS let their presence and popularity known by appearing on several American talk shows. Their popularity was not limited to the United States. On July 1st, after BTS collaborated with famous DJs and rappers in the US, they made their way into the British official singles chart as well as the German official singles chart. The popularity of K-pop was confirmed again with the latest BTS sensation. K-pop is taking the lead in promoting K-culture. Right, Frank, do you have a favorite Korean singer?
I'm not the biggest boy band or K-pop fan. I think that's a generation prior to me. But I like some of the subculture of music in South Korea. Back in the day, in Hongdae, I used to go to some of the clubs that they have here in this neighborhood of Seoul that I live. And I saw a band called Galaxy Express quite a few times, a trio with a sort of hard rock sound and a really good guitarist named Park Jong-hyun. And you know, I look forward not just to the development of K-pop around the world, but the spread of subculture of music around the world, and I think that's interesting for me to look at.
Elise, had you heard of BTS before their debut at the American Music Awards?
Yes, that's because BTS is really well known for its choreography. It's particularly difficult choreography. And so I actually have a video series for NPR called Elise Tries. And as part of Elise Tries, you know, we tried different experiences in Asia, and one of them was K-pop dance. On accident, we wound up in an advanced K-pop dance class instead of a beginner class. And as part of the advanced class, they were teaching BTS choreography, which was extremely complicated, and I was 6.5 months pregnant at the time, and so it was really quite an interesting experience.
I mentioned in the report, Elise, but BTS also filmed segments for the Late Late Show with James Corden and the Jimmy Kimmel Live, as well as the Ellen DeGeneres Show. Does this reality prove, or does it stand as testimony of their popularity in the US?
They've really grown. I mean, it wasn't just the American Music Awards. Before the American Music Awards appearance, BTS had made it onto the American Billboard charts, and I think was the first K-pop boy band to actually do this. And so there was all sorts of publicity around this group. There's also a big social media groundswell of support for BTS. And so you really saw that on the night of their performance at the AMAs, the American Music Awards. So this has been growing for a long time, at least several months, you know, August leading up until the AMA performance, that BTS was getting quite popular in the US.
Fred, how popular is Korean music in France?
It's becoming more and more popular, and I can give you a very concrete and very striking example. Yesterday I met a French professor. He's a head of a Korean studies department in some university, and he told me that 15 years ago in his department there were 3 students, including 2 Chinese, and now there are 500 students. So you can see, and he says mostly these students come because of interest for Korean culture. It can be K-pop first and then drama. This is the case in every French university. You see the Korean studies department really they're overwhelmed by students. I mean, I think it's good, even whether you like or not the K-pop, it's a gateway to get interested in Korean culture and then discover other things like literature, and sometimes coming to Korea and study Korean.
And speaking of the culture, BTS's lyrics are mostly in Korean. The language barrier does not appear to have had their popularity abroad. What are your thoughts on this, Frank?
Well, back in my university days, I studied the cultural production of pop music. One of the features that we explored was that lyrics don't really matter. You know, people are listening to the music. You can understand even the emotion of the song, whether it's a sad song or a happy song, a love song. You know, you can understand that through the music of the song and not particularly the lyrics. People aren't really listening to the lyrics. They're listening to the music, and even the themes of the song, again, can be expressed through the music and the harmony and you know, even the dance.
I mean, American music is very popular, or like British music is very popular in France, and many people don't understand the lyrics anyway. So it's not really new, actually.
What is behind BTS's global popularity, do you suppose, Elise?
Well, some of it's marketing, but you know, also its videos really stand out. That has gone quite viral, you know. So these guys happen to be the trend group of the moment too. I mean, we saw this a few years ago with Girls' Generation, and so there's a million different reasons why a particular group gains popularity or loses popularity, but we can say for sure that these guys are certainly talented in the areas of dance, and they get a lot of attention for it.
I think, yeah, actually, I think really looking at that basic feature of talent, South Korea is developing this talent. The shows, the competition shows, the singing shows that you've seen, the music shows that you see here in South Korea, I think really develop an appreciation for singing that you don't have in the West so much. So that talent is being developed, and even like singing rooms, karaoke rooms, and things. So the tradition of song, of just ordinary people singing, I think is developing that talent more, and you see that reflected in programs in South Korea as well.
Music groups here, boy bands, girl bands, also include foreign members, mostly from China, Japan, Thailand, as well as members who speak English. Do you suppose this diversity also serves as a base for their popularity?
I mean, partly. One of the reasons of the Korean K-pop is that from the very beginning, the producer, they had export-minded strategies. They knew that Korean market was pretty small, and if they want to grow up, they had to target foreign markets. So that was from the very beginning, and they were open to foreign influences. I mean, K-pop, for example, there is a lot of European composers who write the K-pop song. They are invited to Korea. Korean artists go to Europe. There is a lot of exchanges. They, as you said, they invite some foreign artists. They has as well, like a Korean producer, have a very smart strategy use of YouTube, and you can compare with J-pop, the Japanese pop music, where they really control what you can have access online. Like you cannot really see a J-pop clip on YouTube. While on the other hand, Korean producers, they let it open. They try to use YouTube as much as possible. And I think all these export-minded strategies are very, very successful.
You see that a little bit in sport, actually, where some teams, like in the Premiership, they'll get a foreign player, a Korean player, and then that team will become more popular here in South Korea. And I think the strategy of K-pop producers here in South Korea, recruiting Chinese or Taiwanese or other national band members, does the same type of thing.
Now, the popularity of Western cultural contents here in the East is nothing new. It's been there for a while. But in recent times, we've seen a reversal with cultural contents here from this region becoming or gaining more base in the West. What are your thoughts about this trend?
That's good, right? I mean, I think it's always great for people to have any sort of barriers or narrow sort of thinking opened. And so if there's audiences in the West that are getting exposed to music from different parts of the world for the first time, that's an excellent thing. And also, you know, because music is now digital, it's much easier to spread and it's much easier to get music. I mean, back when I was growing up, it was kind of curating music was a specialty, right? Because you would spend a lot of times in record shops or in CD stores finding this new artist and then sharing it with your friends that would then share it with a friend. Now everything is mass. And as a result, that makes well-marketed groups like K-pop groups much more likely to succeed in places outside their own borders.
Yeah, echoing that, yeah, I think it's really encouraging to see, you know, what we've seen historically as a Western sort of movement of culture to the East and to other sort of civilizations, and to see that reversed a little bit, although there are a lot of, you know, Western cultural aspects to K-pop. Still, there is going to be a Korean cultural influence within K-pop, and to see that trend, that cultural trend reversed and headed back into the West, I think is encouraging for sure.
Right. Now, as mentioned earlier, the popularity of Korea's entertainment industry abroad goes beyond music and dramas to include movies as well as TV shows. I have details up next.
Nouvelle Vague, a French film movement that influenced the global film industry from the late 1950s to the 1960s. The British invasion marks the 1960s when British bands, including the Beatles, saw immense popularity in the US and Canada. And Hong Kong action films became very popular in the 1980s. If Korean dramas led the first generation of Hallyu and K-pop led the second generation of Hallyu, the third generation of Hallyu consists of Korean culture as a whole with the spread of K-culture. The breakthrough of K-culture can be seen in various fields. First, in the film industry, not only are Korean films being exported overseas, but they're also making their way into the global market in other ways. Miss Granny, which was released in 2014, was remade in many Asian countries, including China, Vietnam and Indonesia, and mostly saw success. There were also cases where Korean directors were active overseas. The movies Stoker, The Last Stand and Okja were filmed by Korean directors in Hollywood. At the same time, Korean dramas, which led the first generation of Hallyu, has penetrated not just Asia, but also the US market. A drama which aired in Korea in 2013 was remade in the fall of 2017 in the US. This drama was successful in attracting the viewers and recorded high ratings. On the other hand, formats and ideas of a TV show can also be sold abroad. Until now, China was a major importer of Korean TV show formats. Recently, however, the US has shown a great deal of interest in Korean TV programs. Last year, a show idea involving celebrities in their 60s and 70s traveling together was sold, and next year, the second season will be aired. A show where famous stars wear a mask and sing and guests try to figure out who they are is a program idea that was exported to China, Vietnam, Italy and the US. The K-culture fever includes popular music, drama, movie and TV programs. Together with the panel of foreign correspondents, we will discuss the current status and prospects of K-culture.
Frank, we'll start with you then. Are you a fan of Korean dramas?
Well, not so much Korean dramas, more the movies. I did get trapped into watching probably most of the episodes of Cheongdam Princess about a young woman trying to make her way in Gangnam's fashion district, and the challenges that she had coming from sort of a modest background to rise within this very cliquey sort of industry. And again, yeah, I got caught early on, and there was the, you know, love triangle thing going on, and it was kind of an interesting introduction to Korean dramas for me. I'm more interested, I guess, in movies a little bit. We might talk about that a little bit later. I'd like to hear what these guys have to say about their drama favorites.
Elise? Do you have a favorite drama?
I don't watch K-drama. I am glad to see, though, that the exposure to K-drama has really opened up via Netflix. My husband watches them. He likes them a lot and really enjoyed ones available on Netflix. So right now there's one called Misang, which was very popular a few years ago in Korea, which is now being enjoyed by a lot of American audiences. There's another that just made the best television shows of 2017 list on the New York Times called Stranger. And Stranger's Korean name is The Secret Forest. And that's about like law enforcement in Yongsan. And so it's really interesting that these are doing well now with American audiences, and it's good to see.
What do you think is the reason behind the popularity of Korean dramas?
I think in terms of production, they're very well done, very professionally done. I think they are as well, they're done very quickly, so they can adapt quickly to the demand and to the trend, the current trends. And I think in terms of scenario, I mean, I find the scenario sometimes a bit cliché. There is always, very often there is a love triangle, or there is a very rich chaebol guy who falls in love with a poor but very hardworking lady. And I'm a little bit, I'm not very sensitive, I mean, to these kind of stories, but I can understand why some people are, and I think in terms of scenario, they know how to, there is always a cliffhanger, there is always some surprise, so I think like script writers know how to make these kind of stories interesting.
And I think there might be some cultural affinities that you know, encourage these dramas to be popular in other countries, sometimes you know, surprising countries. For example, Daejanggeum is a historical drama that became very popular in Iran. It had, you know, more than 50% or something viewership in Iran about a decade ago. And part of that was because of the conservative nature of that culture presented in the program and the conservative nature of Iranian culture.
Right, that's true. Now, given the popularity of Korea's cultural contents abroad, a growing number of Korean actresses and actors have made inroads into Hollywood. What do you think about that?
I think that's great to see. You know, going through some movies that I like, you know, you have Miss Granny, about a woman that goes to a studio and she transforms into a 19-year-old. That was very popular here, something like 10 million viewers. And then to get into some Korean actors, you have Lee Byung-hun, who is, I think, featured in about 5 movies in the top grossing movies here in South Korea, and he's now appearing in some westerns of all things coming out of Hollywood. The Magnificent Seven is one that he was in just, I think, in 2016. So it's good to see this crossover happen. Another actor that you see is Chae Min-sik. He was in, I think, a couple of western movies, although he doesn't have any lines. He appears in those films in I think, one movie with Scarlett Johansson where he plays kind of a gangster figure.
Lucy.
And it was really interesting. It's good to see some Korean actors make it across the pond, as they say.
Among the more popular Korean TV programs are those related to reality shows. You mentioned it earlier, the auditioning for a music group, or you have someone setting up a dining establishment overseas. What are your thoughts of, have you seen Korean reality shows?
My wife watches them, so I watch them.
What are your thoughts about them?
Korean TV show creator always try to come up with new ideas, and I remember a while ago, 꽃보다 알배, Grandpa of the Flowers, how you send this team of old Korean actors to Europe. That was fun. I mean, they always try to come up with new ideas.
And speaking of that program, Grandpas Over Flowers, this program itself was exported to the US. America's NBC bought the program. It premiered in the year 2016, last year. They had a group of seasoned celebrities in their 50s and 60s traveling around countries without luxuries. What do you think about the format of such programs?
I think people are always looking for new ideas. I mean, one of the big problems in the entertainment industry anywhere is that you're out of new ideas. And so if you can borrow them from foreign countries, that is a very common tack. I mean, American Idol, one of the most popular television shows in the US of all time, came from Europe, I think from the U.K. And so this is going to be just a common trend that we see. So if Japan, if Korea, if Taiwan, if somebody in Asia has some sort of idea that's a hit, I think it's inevitable that the U.S. will try it, because why not just throw money at something to see whether it sticks?
It's becoming a business here as well as those other countries. Producers are trying to design programs that they think might be able to be sold as a format in other countries. I have a producer friend here in South Korea. He's like mining me for some idea. He's like, oh, I need an idea for a new type of show that I can sell to China, the format. You know, we don't have to really produce the show, we just have to design the format and write a script or two, because he's looking to actually export that format to other countries.
How would you explain the global popularity of Korean cultural contents despite the presence of many other Asian productions?
Well, it's certainly to some extent top down, right? The government here spends a lot of energy on promoting the Hallyu wave and soft power, but also, you know, there is quite a community of artists and creatives here. Directors are inspired by other directors. There's the Busan Film Festival, and this is getting to be more and more well known, and so interest drives interest, and that seems to be helpful for the industry.
And speaking of government support, Frank, what are your thoughts of having government guidelines to ensure a greater support base for cultural contents?
I think it's a good spend, you know, on a couple of levels. First off, just domestically, you know, I think it's a good thing for people to identify with their nation. I think that it generates good citizens if you have a strong national identity. I'm not saying that I advocate strong patriotism, but I advocate a strong national identity, and through support for the arts, you generate a strong national identity, and I think that in turn develops a good, responsible citizenry. In terms of supporting the arts for its foreign relations aspect, I think that there are also dividends there, in that more people will recognize South Korea around the world, and it will improve South Korea's soft power. I would like to see that transferred perhaps a little bit into newsmaking, in terms of how the South Korean government supports newsmaking as well, and that, you know, dividend internationally will, I think, be a little bit more stronger and tangible on the political side.
I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this K-pop and Hallyu success is that I think it's changing the way Korean people see themselves now. In the past, I mean, for many decades, Korean people see themselves as a victim of history. They had a very harsh history. There was a Korean War, there was a division. They always see themselves as victims. And what we see now is that, like now that in all Asia, young people, whether in Japan, in China, or in Southeast Asia, are starting to be interested in Korean culture, dressed as Korean people, and Korean fashion, Korean cosmetics are becoming so popular. I think there is a new sense of pride among especially South Korean people, and I think that's a great thing. I don't think why Korea should continue to see itself as a victim, and that they are changing the way they see themselves is a very positive development.
And not just a victim, but a small, unimportant country.
Yeah.
I get asked this all the time. Why are you interested in South Korea? You know, when I'm out interviewing people in the street, and I just want to tell them, well, South Korea is an important place. People all around the world, you know, many people, maybe 70% of people have South Korean products in their homes or in their hand, and they're increasingly consuming South Korean cultural contents. South Korea is not this unimportant, or, you know, in some views, a victim of history. It's you know, an important country in the world that people have a good reason to pay attention to.
Words like manga and anime to refer to Japanese comics have become mainstream language. What more could the industry here in Korea, the entertainment industry, or those in charge of cultural contents do to ensure that Korean culture becomes mainstream overseas?
Well, Korean food is certainly well known. I mean, I think it's part of the American or English vernacular to hear words like kimchi or bibimbap, right? So I think that's already happening when it comes to food. And all these things will happen naturally. I mean, there's only so much I think that a government should do in order to, because then it kind of becomes a turnoff, right? Because it's like, oh, some government wants me to really understand this particular phrase and use it. That's weird. So I think just let it happen, you know? These things spread by word of mouth.
Yeah, I don't think the government should try to tell us which word we use. I think North Korea is trying to push for the word insam instead of ginseng. Why? The word in French is ginseng, let's use it.
Well, the definition of the word culture goes beyond music, movies and dramas to include a society's lifestyle, thoughts and ethos. Now, having said this, it's clear that the growing presence of K-culture abroad looks to serve as a window to Korea for those who have yet to travel here. Keeping this in mind, let's make cultural contents that will display our values and more. Thank you for watching.